You're only hurting other Polynesians by gatekeeping this. Running a small business in today's day and age is hard, period. Why Polynesians specifically? One thing I've noticed with Polynesians and why we created this is we kind of don't share best practices. Why is there some pride that says, you know, now that I've made it, I'm going to never share any information with other Polynesians who help me. The funny thing about Polynesians doing it is they're gatekeeping things that Palangis and other cultures already know. You're only hurting other Polynesians by gatekeeping this.
Welcome everyone to the Unfiltered Talk podcast, episode 23. It's kind of been an ongoing joke now where I'm like, 23 episodes I've lost money on this podcast. So we're still running, boys. We haven't been canceled yet. We haven't run out of money to fund this podcast, but here we are. Really quick, I want to introduce our guest here, Doug Fiefia, member of the House of Representatives in Utah. Doug, say what's up real quick.
What's up, y'all? It's a pleasure to be here. An honor to be on this podcast. So thanks for having me.
No, of course. And thank you for coming on. We appreciate you making some time out of your busy schedule, I'm sure. Now, I also want to point out, we recently acquired a large lump sum of money to afford the presence of a co-host for this episode. Out of TikTok, say what's up.
Yo, you know what it is. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm a really busy guy. I got Call of Duty after this. March Madness going on. But, I had to make time for the homies. So, pleasure to be a co-host on this Unfiltered episode.
What was a part of that NIL deal? What did you have to do to get Elder TikTok here?
It was a large lump sum of money. It was a Happy Meal at McDonald's and some sort of foot rub or something. I can't remember exactly.
Foot rub, I don't know about the foot rub, but you definitely
the text messages.
You,
I think
you definitely said filet of fish combo. So, that's why I'm here. That's the only reason why I'm here.
That's definitely worth it, man.
Yeah, I had to sign an NDA for the other stuff. But no, I'm happy to see you again and be here. I actually had a question, if that's okay, before we get into it, okay? Please. You had posted a video recently on your page, right? And it was hilarious, first of all, but I wanted to know how truthful it was. And it was the reel of you talking to somebody at the state capitol over there.
Was it the voter one?
It was the voter one. So, and I quote, you said, when you don't think the joke was funny, but you need their vote, right? We all know the trend. And so you're shaking his hand, you're laughing, the joke's not funny. He said, you're a little bit like side-eyeing the camera. So my question to you is, why did you make that? Is that actually a true story or is that a real experience?
I mean, I think it's pretty real. I mean, to be honest, if I'm being like
unfiltered,
dare I say?
I mean, it's real. Like, you have to have people's votes. That's how you get things done on the Hill. There's 104 legislators, 75 in the House, 29 in the Senate, and you have to get a majority of votes. And so there's different personalities, different backgrounds, different people, and you have to build relationships with them. And so sometimes you have to be their friend and laugh at jokes, even though maybe it's not funny, and you have to get votes. And now that's the hard thing with it, right? Because it's like, oh, you're just being fake, right? That could be seen as like, oh, Doug is just a politician, he's being fake. But the reality of it is like, you've got to build relationships. And so part of it is like real, like, you've got to build relationships. You might have to partner with someone that you don't necessarily agree on with every issue. But the other side of it is like, yeah, there's a little bit of that game. And so I think that's what people see from the outside is like, oh, all politicians are fake. And that's what was funny about it. The other side is like, no, look, we got to all be friends. And we might be fighting with me and a legislator on one issue. Yeah. And then on the next issue, we're best friends. We're like, oh, we stand on the same side.
That's
so
crazy.
You have to do a lot of that as a politician. You can't hold grudges. You have to have a short-term memory because we have to work with each other over the course of 45 days. And we passed almost 600 bills. And so you can imagine if you're one of my colleagues, we may disagree on half of those. And so if I'm mad at you because you disagreed on one vote, like, we might be laughing one time and then we might be fighting the next, and you just got to move on.
Hopefully one of those bills that got passed was the one where we can get some glow-in-the-dark tape on the I-15 when it rains, because can I just say I can't see shite when it's raining. Is there any plans to kind of improve the Utah driver experience in that regard?
The crazy thing is I've gotten so many DMs about that.
Yeah.
It's just
Wow.
like the amount of people that want to do that. And I said, like, someone asked me just last week, can we run this bill? And I said, absolutely. It's going to cost money, which means it's going to raise taxes, which means it might be harder to pass in Utah because we like to be fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
We don't love raising taxes on the people. If anything, we love cutting taxes. And so what's the trade-off? And this guy was like, oh, raising taxes? Nah, I'm good. I'll just keep on driving blind.
Well, isn't the trade-off safety? like driving safe, like not having a fatal incident? Like, isn't that the trade-off?
Yeah.
Oh,
But the crazy thing with politics is anytime you raise anything in taxes, it's like, replace him. He's the worst. I can't believe you raised my taxes. And so we have to be very sensitive to people's budgets, right? There's younger families, there's younger college students trying to make it.
Yeah, that's true.
And anytime you raise taxes, it affects, the average day American that is like, or Utahn that feels like, man, I'm already, my budget's already tight. Now you've tightened it a little bit more. And, some people are like, just to light up the roads.
Yeah.
We three might be like, that's the best thing that's ever happened. And there's still another half of the state that are like, what a waste of money. You got glow in the dark tape for our highway. And that's what they'll say. They'll make it seem so silly and so stupid.
Right.
And they'll put it in the newspaper and they'll write about Doug was the one who ran the bill to put glow in the dark tape
on the road.
and it cost us millions of dollars. So there's trade-offs. And that's why it's hard to take any position in government is you get shot down and people will throw arrows regardless of if you like feel like it's the right thing to do. There will always be arrows and mud thrown at you. So
that's a good point, and I kind of want to elaborate on that a little bit. So you kind of mentioned like the political environment, just as a whole, across the U.S., dare I say the world. The political environment is just like in complete turmoil in terms of like the conversations and discussions that are being had. So why would you, Doug, as a Polynesian man, get into politics in Utah?
Yeah, I think at this point in history of Utah, of the country, you've got to stand for something. There was a point in my life and in my career, I was cool with being the guy that everyone liked and don't burn any bridges, don't say anything that would offend anyone. In grad school, and dare I say even the last company I worked for, people had no idea where I stood politically, and I was okay with that. And I was just the happy-go-lucky Polynesian, the friendly guy everyone smiled at that was just like, man, you're so good, you're so nice. It got to a point where I started realizing, man, I actually think this is wrong, and I'm not saying anything. And I think it goes to my kids and being the example for them and telling them, hey, if there's something wrong, you need to speak up. If someone is mean to someone else, you've got to be the one to say, hey, that's not cool. Or if someone tries to pull you in to do something that's wrong, that's wrong, you got to speak up and say, guys, I'm not going to do that. But yet, as an adult, I wasn't doing that. And so it got to the point where I had to say, look, I'm either going to have to stand up for what's right or, be the friend that, everyone wants, but literally don't have any principles that I stand on. And I wanted to be the dad that was the example to them and not be a hypocrite. And that's kind of what pushed me to the edge to say, hey, I'm going to stand up for what I believe is right because I want a better Utah, a better America that my kids can grow up and live by the principles that I believe are correct for everyone.
I love that. Stand up for something or stand up for nothing. I think that's how the saying goes, right? Did you have something, Cole? Sorry.
I was just interested, if I may, you used the word compelled, like when you were explaining your story, you're like, I was compelled to do this for my children, right? Or I was compelled that I have to set the example first. But like to the everyday citizen, primarily here in Utah, it's like, well, there's, I guess in the best way possible, there's nothing wrong with being idly by. You know what I mean? The everyday citizen, go to work, clock in, clock out, do your taxes, whatever, right? But what is that like little element of you, like why you? You know what I mean? Out of everyone who could have took a stand, out of everyone who could have spoke out and said something, what was that one thing about you that you were just like, because you didn't have to choose to be this voice now. Unfortunately, now now you're out there now, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? You're a voice now, and with all this flack and everything, like, you signed up to do this. So what was that one thing that like compelled you out of everything? You could have just kept going on your merry way. Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask
Yeah.
you? So what was that component?
I think what started happening is I started seeing a shift in Utah. Is there was just kind of a divide on between what I believed is right and what's wrong, and I'm not one to sit by and just like let things happen. And it got to the point where I had to say, either I have to put up or shut up. Like, stop complaining, and you have to do something about it. And that's where I felt compelled to say, like, okay, well, you know, if I believe these things, I've got to do something about it. Like, I hate when people like complain about things, and I'm like, well, what are you going to do about it? And they're like, well, I'll just, you know, go back to my regular job that I hate and eat the crappy food that I want. Like, I'm not going to change anything in my life. I'm just going to continue to complain. And it got to that point where I was like, you know what? I've been complaining about the way things are running. If I actually want to change something, I've got to get in a seat that actually can make those changes. And it wasn't enough to just stand on the sidelines and cheer on people that I believed in, and I believed the values and the principles that they were moving our country or maybe even our state in that direction. I was like, look, it's too important to be on the sideline. I've got to get in the game. And
so one of the things that you took a pretty strong stance on involved a bill that had been passed, or sorry, a bill that was being talked about. I'm not sure if it got passed or not, but it was the HB 269 bill. Obviously, there was a post that went viral because you're sitting there, you know, advocating for this bill to get passed to protect kids and to protect girls in the locker room and dorm environment. Kind of talk about the motivations behind your advocacy for the bill, and also like what your experience was having to do all that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about that was my first floor speech ever. So, you know, this bill comes up, and you know, I know the bill sponsor, and you know, hearing about it and why it was run. This is something that I'm passionate about, like keeping safe places for not only our girls, but really all kids. And then that's what I stated. I wanted to be very clear in my speech, is that this is really for all kids, not just for our girls. I have 3 girls and a boy. And so it became very real, thinking, man, my girl's going to go to college. My girl's going to go out on her own, and then being placed in a dorm or a locker room that she doesn't feel comfortable in. No parent wants that ever, right? And so this was actually a very, I think a very, how do I say this? A good balance of a bill, because it actually thought about trans kids too. I think what could have happened is we could have just said, okay, regardless of where you're at, like you're defining your sex, you have to go to the dorm of your biological sex, period.
Regardless.
End of story. That's it. Okay. What we did is, yes, you go to the dorm of your biological sex, but if you don't feel comfortable in that setting, that the university will then provide special accommodations for you. And so awesome. It was very reasonable. I think the way that we handled it as a state legislature was thinking of all kids and all parents. But I had to stand up for my girls, and I think I've been an advocate on social media for keeping girl sports, and also just keeping those sacred spaces and protected spaces for girls.
Was there any kickback or opposition to that bill, and where is it coming from, this opposition?
Yeah, I think the trans community came out strong, hating the bill, regardless of the special accommodations that were made in the bill. There was a lot of even Polynesians who came out on my post and negatively attacked me.
The brown on brown crime, the stuff you see on Fox News, bro.
So it was interesting, right? And I that's a hill I don't want to say die on, but that's the saying is, that's a hill that I feel like this is one thing I know I can stand up for and know it's right. Like, not only for kind of girl spaces, but also I think we did the right thing. This was the right thing for all kids. And even one of my constituents read the newspaper and read just one line of my speech and wrote me crying and saying, I cannot believe you would say this. I'm crying, writing you in tears. And
upset.
You sat in my living room saying you would stand up for all kids. And I then told her, this was my whole speech. And after she read it, she was like, oh, I learned a lesson not just to read the headline and just the one line. It's like, I should actually look more into it than just reading what the media puts out. And I said, yeah, if you read the speech, read the bill, it's actually a great bill. And it's really thinking about everyone.
Yeah, we are no strangers to having clips being taken out of whole
Context.
interviews and saying, you guys are this and that, you guys are bigots, right?
Absolutely. And so we can relate on some level for that.
Absolutely.
But I think you're in a good position to not really worry about that, especially when they don't have all the information gathered, right? Speaking of backlash, though, from that one experience that you had, I'm just going to name a couple facets of your life because we personally know each other as well.
Yeah.
But for the viewer who might not be watching it, you're a family guy, you're a father, businessman, a religious, right? All these awesome, obviously in the government. But we were curious to know, out of all those facets of your life, all those, different avenues that you have in life, and maybe some that I haven't mentioned yet, in your time being in the Utah government, which one has been affected the most?
It definitely affects me as a husband and father the most.
Husband and father, the most?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that's first and foremost, but it's actually been positive.
Sure.
Just because I think my kids seeing me standing up for what I believe in is more than I could ever say. I could say, hey, go after your dreams, stand up for what's right, but they can see their dad actually doing it. And that's something that I could never replicate in any other position or title that I've ever held before. And so that's been special for me. The second, though, is probably my career. I parted ways with Google. I was at Google for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And
what position, if you don't mind me asking?
I managed, for part of the team, I managed sales teams in Google Ads, and then in Google Cloud, I was a territory lead over sales also. So in sales my whole time, but left kind of a career path I thought I was going to be on forever, so that I could run certain bills that I wanted to. But also, I just didn't feel that that's where my passion and where my life would lead me. Not that politics will be part of my life forever, but I think this is kind of, I'm on the path right now, and there were just too many things on my plate that I had to get rid of some.
This is actually a later question, but I want to bring it up now. What is the whole process into getting into politics in Utah? Like, because for me, it's a completely foreign entity, right? Like, it's like I go to work, I have my business, I have these things, but then like politics, you have to run, they have to vote for you. What's the process look like if you're wanting to get into Utah politics?
Yeah, so I mean, January next year is filing. So if you want to run for the state house, we all have to file, and anyone can file. You don't have to have any background, don't have to have a degree, don't have to study anything. And then you just got to campaign, right? You're raising money, you're getting out the vote, you're talking to your neighbors, and then there's different periods. There's a primary, and then there's a general. Primary, you're running against someone who's in your party, and then you become the nominee. And then the general election, you're running against the other party. Usually if you're a Democrat, you're running against a Republican. If you're a Republican, you're running against a Democrat. So it's fairly simple, but it's actually a lot of work and time. Other TikTok came out, and we did some cool delivery of some cookies, awesome. Talking to delegates, and just kind of being in kind of the heat of things. And I was running and didn't know where I was going to land, but fast forward, 3 to 6 months later, and I'm now in the seat. And so it takes a lot of work and effort. It's also uncomfortable putting your name on a ballot where people have to decide. Like, man, if you lose, it's like, oh man, like this is not a business, this is not an idea, this is you.
Cousins didn't vote for me, bro.
Like,
was it enough?
And that's what you start questioning, right? It's like, man, like my friends and family, like, did they come out? Did they donate? Did they volunteer? And you're like, man, you find out who your friends are when you have to put your name on the line. And people have to vote for you or against you.
Don't worry, those cookies got the job done, my boy.
Yes,
You know what I'm
sir.
saying? We got
Yes,
it
sir.
done.
That's
We got
getting
it done.
clipped, man. That's getting clipped for
I'm
sure.
telling you.
Start finding out who really supports you through thick and thin, man. That's
Facts.
so now you are in the seat, right? You're obviously a representative of the Utah government now, the House of Reps. So what are some of your priorities in your position now? Like what goals are you looking to achieve while you're in your tenure?
Kind of the big focus now for me has been technology. Being in the tech industry for the last decade, I'm kind of focused on that. This last session, I passed kind of a large bill for anyone to run, but it's exciting that Utah is leading again. Essentially, what this bill does is it allows us as users of social media to own, manage, and control our data, which is huge right now. Right today, if you post something on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, it's not your data anymore.
Xbox group chat
own it,
also,
right?
by the way.
Please don't leak the Xbox. Please don't. Please.
I mean, you better talk to Xbox and make sure because they own that, right? That's theirs. And so it brings back the power back to individuals. I worked at Google, managed sales teams around Google Ads, and it's crazy to think that they spend millions and millions of dollars to figure out how to keep you on your phone, swiping and scrolling for even just a millisecond more of your time. And then they take that data and information you put on social media platforms, it informs an algorithm, and they basically sell it for billions of dollars. They're trading our free will for profit margin. And so what we're doing is taking back that power and putting it back in the hands of users. But I just am worried about the next generation and them being on social media so much. The crazy thing about what social media companies can do with that data is they literally can control what we do, how we consume information, what we buy, what we think, right? You've seen kind of the Gen Z, your guys' generation, basically be manipulated into think a certain way because of what TikTok has done and what other large platforms have done. And so this was a huge bill. The governor at the end of the session said, this may be a bill that can change the world. This may be one of the most important things we do for a generation. This bill also, a group of people met with the Pope. One of the last audiences he had before his health declined. This was maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. And they talked about this bill and the legislation in Utah. And it's interesting to hear that the Pope and the senior leadership of the Catholic Church were supportive of this. And kind of the way that it was described to me from someone who was there in that meeting said they hold that this is so important because the battle that we're fighting now is over free agency and free will. We talk a lot about protecting the freedom of speech, but we don't talk enough about the freedom of will. And I think that's the battle we're fighting now with big tech and social media platforms.
Very interesting you say that when you're talking about giving the power back to the people, fighting technology. And as someone, you have expertise in this realm, right? And forgive me if I'm wrong, but I remember you also are very involved in AI as well, right? You have a history of that. Good, bad. How do you feel about AI, especially being in that? Because you were just talking about free will, right? And AI is like, they're creating their own, whatever you want to call it, right? So how do you personally feel being in the industry now out about AI?
Yeah, so AI is an amazing tool, right? It's probably the best, most advanced invention second to the internet, or maybe even just as important as the internet.
Completely agree.
And so when you think of that amount of power that it has to do, I stated this many times publicly that I am a little worried about it, and I don't want to be an alarmist or this the little boy who cried wolf, but
whistleblower.
Yeah, it's just like we've got to be smart about the way that we handle AI. And I think there's a balance, right? Because you don't want to stifle innovation. You don't want to regulate it so much that these tech companies can't advance AIs for it to do amazing things that we need in advancing kind of the world and how we function. But also we've got to protect individuals, kids, families from being hurt by it. And so that's what I'm worried about, getting out too quick. And then instead of being a little proactive, we're very reactive. Like, oh, no, it's already hurt so many people. Oh, we've got to dial it back. And so what I like about what Utah's doing is we were the first to pass significant AI policy. We've created an Office of AI Policy in Utah, and then we're being very, very proactive and thoughtful about how do we introduce bills that don't stifle innovation, but continue to kind of rein in some guardrails to protect individuals, kids, families, businesses.
Yeah. So what are some of the specific concerns? Because I know in my industry, I work in the healthcare industry, we use AI to kind of help with billing, and that's some of the most, I could talk for hours about how horrible our healthcare industry is when it comes to claims, denials, and just taking care of our fellow Americans. But what are some specific concerns for you as a representative of Utah when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what we've seen with AI is that it's the ability to take information, a lot of information, and just consume it and give you digestible summaries of what it can do, or like of the information you're trying to understand. And it can do things a lot faster. It can compute, in seconds what would take hours or days or even months to do. Data is fine. What I'm concerned about is when it moves from data to people, right?
Oh, okay.
And
like
so,
absorbing the information, like
yeah.
people. Okay.
So if I take my camera out and it has you two in it, and I ask it, who should I hire? And it starts evaluating you and your personal, how much time you're on video games and how much you're on social media and how do I manipulate you and how much do you make, and that personal information that you don't want out. And yes, there's laws in place, but we just haven't even, I don't even think we even know how advanced AI is and what it can do. It's amazing what it can do already with products, right? If I put two products here and I have it in my camera, I can evaluate where it's made, how it's made, what, I can ask it any question. What's the best for my diet? What's has the most protein, whatever.
So
but then when you start evaluating people and even to move it even further, if you start evaluating kids, right? That's what I'm afraid of, is what kids are, you have two kids and it's like, what kid is the most susceptible to X, Y, and Z? It's like, well, this kid, their parents work all day.
Spooky.
This kid is on, this,
I did not think about that.
this video game 8 hours a night.
Spooky.
And then you have access to chat, and then you have access, this is what this kid likes, and this is what they eat.
Do you really think it's going to be like that? Or like it's on the way to?
I mean, the technology is there. And one thing I've stated publicly, it's been in the newspaper with this last bill, is Ronald Reagan had a phrase, and I kind of stole it and changed it. But the 9 most dangerous words in modern history is, we're big tech and we're here to help. I just don't think that anyone is policing or doing anything with big tech and the power that they have. And nor do we know or understand how much power is in AI.
Yeah.
We're just kind of allowing them to do it because it's advancing, because it all seems great. It's going to change industries. It's going to make it more advanced. It's going to help us, which is great. But there's also a dark side to it that I'm just, I again, don't want to be
conspiracy theorist.
Theorists.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that we all know it's there. We just kind of push it outside of our mind. Like, no, ChatGPT is awesome. I use it to evaluate this. But just think about what it can evaluate. If it can do that, we can evaluate humans and start looking at our personal information. That is already public. Oh, and by the way, all those social media platforms that know what you like, what you watch, where
TikTok.
your eyes go. I mean, you put that in AI, and now I can know and control what you think and what you do. And so that's where it's scary. So
that's why all those food posts be popping up on your TikTok, bro.
Oh, I
You know
like to
what I
cook.
mean?
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? All right, bro. Like that's what it is, bro. And they be listening to me. I believe it, bro. They're listening. But anyway.
I wanted to kind of last section here question, but it's in regard to Polynesian businesses, and we love our Polynesian community. Like, I am so grateful I am a member of the Polynesian community. Grateful to be able to support our small businesses. And something that I've noticed, though, is that Polynesian businesses find it very hard to stay afloat. I don't know if it's just in Utah. It's probably all over the nation. But in Utah specifically, you see a shop open up, Polynesian food. Delicious. Hapas. Please come back.
Oh my
please.
gosh, Hapas, those hurricane fries.
Please
What happened?
Delicious. But then, a few months later, they run into financial crisis, or I don't know what it is. A lot of the leases are super expensive for these businesses, and they can't seem to stay afloat. But why do you think that Polynesian businesses can't stay afloat out here in Utah? And what are some tools or words of advice that you could give them as a legislator?
Sure. I think running a small business in today's day and age is hard, period. Yeah. It's Polynesian or not, it's very, very hard to start a business in any industry right now. And so I'll just kind of start with that. Why Polynesian specifically? I don't know that I have kind of the silver bullet that's answering all of the problems, but one thing I would say is we saw a need for entrepreneurship and kind of the issues we all face. And that's why we started Raise the Tide. It was a nonprofit to focus primarily on entrepreneurs, Polynesian entrepreneurs who kind of needed help. One thing I've noticed with Polynesians and why we created this is we kind of don't share best practices. It's kind of a weird thing. There are tons of gatekeepers, bro.
That's what I was waiting
That's
for.
what it was.
Like,
I was like, there's a specific word we're looking
Yes.
for. So if you could just drop that in there, Doug.
in every industry, right? Yeah. Like there's Polynesians, and it probably happens in other cultures too, but that make it and they gatekeep, right? And so what we tried to do with Raise the Tide is let's get rid of that. Like, why is there some pride that says, now that I've made it, I'm going to never share any information with other Polynesians who help me? If any other Polynesian who owns a construction business comes and says, hey, I want help, I'll help you. Hands down. And it's because, yes, there's competition, but everyone's a competition. Yeah. Right. And I think the funny thing about Polynesians doing it is they're gatekeeping things that Palangis and other cultures already know. So it's like you're only hurting other Polynesians by gatekeeping this.
Yes,
that's
and you're only helping other cultures get higher. And so you've heard the analogy of crabs in a bucket.
Yes.
And sometimes I think that is the Polynesian culture is once someone gets out or close to the top, you just pull them right back down. And some now at the top are climbing out, and someone's climbing up, and they just kick them down, stay down there. And so, I hope we get to a point in the Polynesian culture, and we kind of get back to our roots, because that's really what it is Polynesian people are the people that if I need something, it's yours. If I like that shirt and I said, hey, Tautai, let me get that shirt, bro. It's coming off his back. Not right now. Not right now.
Okay, my fault.
But I do want McDonald's after this too. So
right.
We need to go back to those roots where that giving and love, it is innate in us. And I think something happened when we came to the mainland, to the States, where we lost that. I was just about to ask you,
what the heck happened? Is it because we're Americanized? Is it because we're Fiefia Palangi? Like, what happened to that love? Like, what's that island love?
I think we saw the way that other people act and react to business and different things, and we said, oh, well, people aren't sharing with me, and I'm a new person here coming for the first time from Tonga or Samoa or wherever, and they're not just openly sharing with me, so I guess this is what we do here. And I think what's special about Polynesians is we've always given to everyone, to anyone. And that's when you ask Palangis or people here, they're just like, when you ask them about Polynesians, they're like, man, they're the friendliest. They invite me over for dinner. They give me all the food. Anytime they have extras, they just give, right? Yeah. And so I think we just need to go back to kind of our roots of, man, that ofa, that love that we have for each other and for other people, and stop gatekeeping, man.
I love that, and that's something that Tautai and I think, like one of the reasons like Tautai and I are close is I feel like we have that same goal of just not doing it the way that it's traditionally been done. You know what I mean? Because that's not led to any success. It's not led to any lifting up of the community around us and stuff. I mean, you see Tautai doing his thing with trying to lift up the Polynesian community, but especially the youth, because the youth, if we can instill that in the youth, man, that's going to be, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to see a much different community around us, right?
Absolutely.
It's weird that you want to gatekeep your success from like your own people. You know what I'm saying? And in the most respectful way possible. Like, we bounce ideas off each other. Like, as far as like social media is concerned, right? Like, how do you do this for your videos? Or I really like that, or something like that. When the Polynesian prideful gets to you, a lot of people want to be like, like, I'm self-made. I did, but like, that doesn't make no sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, why not share with somebody what made me successful? Why wouldn't you want your others winning? And that's something. It's easier to tear somebody down than it is to build them up. It's harder. It is harder, but it's easier to do that. I think that's what we struggle with a lot sometimes.
You know who the biggest critics of my political career has been?
Oh, no.
Don't say
Don't say Polynesians.
Don't say Tongans, bro. Do not say Tongans. Go ahead, say it.
Samoans, no. It's no, for real.
Rightfully
It's been Polynesians.
What the frick, man? I'm telling you. Because you know why? Because you're doing like Doug Fiefia. You've never heard of a Polynesian politician. First of all, politicians are one of the most divisive people in the world, right? That's just by nature, right? Let alone you throw a Tongan up in there, bruh. Like, that is something unheard of. And Polynesians don't like things that are unheard of, untraditional. You know what I'm saying, man?
So that's the heartbreaking thing is there's been people on my posts that I know and they know me. And I'm like, you could have reached out personally, but you wanted to have your 5 seconds of fame to call me out publicly, which is, if that's what you want to do, that's cool. But like, one, I'm not even their rep. Two, they're not even going on their reps pages and trolling them.
It's just the fact that you're Polynesian.
Yeah,
Guaranteed.
they're coming to my page and doing that on my page. And three, what you guys are doing is I'm being transparent. One thing I've stated on multiple times is I want to be the most transparent politician in Utah. So I'm sharing how I'm voting. I'm sharing things that I'm doing, knowing very well that people are going to throw arrows and attack.
Oh, the white man got to Doug, man. They got another one. They got the Polynesians got to Doug. Man, you're making us polys look bad, man. Why do you talk like a white man now? You're so like I get it.
You
bro.
used to say toko, now you say sir and stuff.
So that's been kind of disheartening to see. Yeah. But I will say on the flip side also, the biggest cheerleaders have been the Polynesians also. So
that's something we gotta talk about.
Yeah.
Your best supporters are people, but your worst enemies, your biggest haters, also Polynesian. He's so right about that.
That's so true, and we've seen that a lot on our own
on
our own platforms,
Oh, if you don't, I do have a question real quick.
Yeah,
it's a hot topic question that's been going around right now.
Is he gonna get us canceled?
Never. Okay, we're with Doug. He can't get us canceled.
I'm already canceled.
Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so I think it's very publicly known that you are a Republican representative, conservative. Yeah. That is where your beliefs lie. Have you heard what's been going on with Elon Musk lately?
Yeah. Yep.
Can you give us a brief explanation and your thoughts about it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking
about. Okay, this is a hot topic right
now. Well, I think just Doge and cutting and kind of the layoffs and everything that's happening. Look, I think it's a good thing. Like it hurts. One way I've heard it said is when you cut a fat off a pig, that pig is gonna squeal.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going through those growing pains of, look, we are in debt, trillions of dollars, and we've got to cut the fat off. And that's going to hurt. There's going to be jobs that were created that need to be cut. Yeah. And so I think there's been waste and a lot of spend that I think they're finding ways to reel that back in. And I think it's a good thing for us because that puts more dollars back into our paychecks, back into the economy. I love that even Trump is saying, like, hey, a part of this money that we find, that we cut, you're going to get, it's going to go back to the Americans, and we're going to get like dividend checks. So I think it's great. It's going to hurt. Like, it's never fun to see layoffs. Those are real people who have real jobs. And so, like, my heart goes out to those people. Yeah. Like, that's a hard thing to go through. But I think just like in your and I, like if we're finding a job, we have to bring value to the table in order to keep our jobs, in order to continue to grow. If we're business owners, we have to continue to bring value to the market, or we get shut down. And so I think it's a good thing. It's sad that we have a group of people that are now burning Teslas to then show their anger towards Elon Musk. The crazy thing is, it's not hurting Elon Musk
That's
one bit.
No.
It's hurting other Americans.
It is. You're right.
So that's the crazy thing is, like, guys, like, let's take a step back and realize what's happening. Let's let it play out. Give it some time, right? All of a sudden, we all care what the president is doing when we had a president who was missing, who was like, for how long?
Missing.
I mean,
Unfiltered.
like, where was that guy? I don't know. It's like, and he doesn't know where he's at either. And then you have, and you have people like not care. And then we have a president who's actually there doing stuff.
Who cares?
And now everyone's like, let's throw arrows and attack. And so there's going to be some growing pains for sure. But I think we're moving in the right direction and excited about the amount of savings that it's going to have at the end of the day for taxpayers in Utah and taxpayers throughout the country.
Yeah, I'm a skeptic. I'm always someone that says let's wait it out and see. And I think that's the best way to handle this candidacy and this administration is, guys, let's wait and see. Because I think our biggest problem is people jump to conclusions too soon. They make assumptions way too soon without limited information, right? They take this limited information and they portray it as the whole picture. You get one ugly ass image, when you try and do that. So I think that's the right way to go about these things. And hey, you know what? I don't think Trump is perfect. I don't think his administration is perfect. He'll do some good things and he'll do some bad things. And it's just be fair, right? Be fair. I think that's what we've all been asking for the most. But Doug, in closing, I wanted to ask you, what's a kind of a concluding word that you'd like to share with your constituents here in Utah, the voters? What are some words of advice, some parting words that you would say on the end of this podcast?
Sure. I think first to kind of our Polynesian youth and the Polynesian kids, whether you're in high school, elementary, college, is part of why I did this wasn't only for my kids. It was so that they could see someone who looks like me and looks like us in those seats, and actually see someone at the table that looks like them and represents them. And so I hope that they have kind of their goals broadened of like, actually I can do and be anything that I want to be. And that's kind of the goal. And so I've opened up the door to say any Polynesian who wants to come up to the Capitol, come, right? We just had an award from Orem come all the way to the Capitol to show their youth. And it was so cool to see the eyes open up and just for them to feel welcome at the Capitol. One kid said, man, I only see this on the news. And it was touching. And it was also just cool to see kids like broaden kind of their vision of what I could actually become. So that's I think the first thing. The second thing to people in general, man, what I've learned in this last, 3 months that I've been elected in, the last 3-4 months, is we all have a say and it matters. And there are constituents who text me that I respond to. There's viewpoints and perspectives that change my perspective. The principles always stay the same. My principles of what I believe in will always stay the same. But policy it's so, like, everyone thinks it's so black and white, but it's not, right? Yeah. Like, should we put glow-in-the-dark tape on the freeway?
Yes.
And, like, that's not a Republican or Democrat thing, but we have to look at, there's so many different point of views, and someone shares a perspective and an experience with me, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I was actually against that, but, yeah, now I can see why this is valuable. And so those perspectives matter. Reach out to your representatives and get involved. Make sure you vote, make sure you register, make sure if there is an opportunity for you to get engaged with your political party, that's where the rubber meets the road, and you really have an impact on Utah, your neighbors, your communities.
Love that. Do you have anything else?
Doug Fiefia, District 48, Republican Party, House of Representatives. Will you ever run for president? and I mean that sincerely. It's unfiltered. I mean that sincerely. Have you have any inclination to ever run for president?
I don't think so, man. I don't think I'll ever run for president. I don't even know if public office bigger than this is in the cards. Maybe. What I've always said is I will continue to run for positions and offices that I feel like I can make a difference and impact more people. And so if that's something else after this, great. And something I've said also on another podcast is if I ever get to the point where I walk in the Capitol and I don't feel like it's special anymore and I don't feel the sacredness of that place, I've got to get out of there, right? I'm too comfortable. Somebody else has to come in that feels kind of the fire of like, we've got to make improvements. And so I never want to get comfortable in my seat. If I'm not doing things to improve the life of Utahns, like, get me out. And I will be the first one to volunteer to be like, all right, I'm done. Get someone new in because we need some fresh ideas and some new blood in there.
Love it. Thank you, Doug, for coming on today. Doug Fiefia, House of Reps in the state of Utah. Unfiltered Talk Podcast, the podcast for the people and by the people and without a filter. We'll catch y'all later. Peace out. Doug, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, man.